You already know what a gorilla looks like. You have seen one behind thick glass at a zoo, sitting with its back against a concrete wall, peeling a piece of fruit with fingers that look uncomfortably like yours. You have seen them in documentaries, silverbacks moving slowly through mountain mist, infants clinging to their mothers' backs, whole families grooming each other in the late afternoon light. You know they are large. You know they are strong. You have probably been told, at some point, that they are gentle giants, that they are shy, that they are more afraid of you than you are of them. That impression is exactly what makes them so dangerous. Because here is what most people are never told. The gorilla is not a gentle giant. It is the largest living primate on Earth, built by tens of millions of years of territorial competition into something so physically formidable that no land predator in its habitat, not the leopard, not the forest buffalo, will engage one directly without calculating whether the cost is survivable. What they actually are is something evolution spent 10 million years perfecting. And what evolution built was something that should command a level of fear we have almost entirely failed to give it. To understand the gorilla, you first have to understand where it lives and what living there demands. The equatorial forests of Central Africa, the Congo Basin, the Virunga Massif, the highland forests straddling the borders of Rwanda, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo are not peaceful places. They are resource-contested, biologically dense, and seasonally brutal. The forest canopy controls everything: where light falls, where fruit ripens, where water pools, where competing animals move. And the competition is constant. Forest elephants, chimpanzees, forest buffalo, leopards, and multiple gorilla groups all operate within overlapping ranges, all dependent on the same finite patches of fruiting trees, the same water sources, the same corridors of edible vegetation. For a gorilla, losing territory is not an inconvenience. It is a death sentence administered slowly. A group pushed from a high-quality fruiting range faces nutritional decline, infant mortality, and eventual reproductive collapse. The silverback, the dominant male who leads the group, is directly responsible for preventing that outcome. His entire existence is organized around territorial maintenance, the repulsion of rival males, and the protection of a group of females and young whose survival depends entirely on his willingness to engage threats that would kill most animals outright. This is not a background detail. It is the organizing principle of everything the gorilla is. In this environment, the gorilla did not evolve to be peaceful. It evolved to dominate, to project overwhelming force as a deterrent, and to deploy that force without hesitation when the deterrent fails. And the toolkit it developed starts with the body. A male western lowland gorilla stands approximately 1.7 meters tall when upright and weighs between 140 and 200 kilograms. A large silverback in the wild can exceed 220 kilograms. Those numbers, printed on a placard beside a zoo enclosure, sound significant but manageable. They do not prepare you for what those numbers actually mean in terms of physical output. They are deceptive in a specific way. A gorilla's muscle fiber composition is fundamentally different from a human's. Where human skeletal muscle is approximately 60% slow-twitch fiber, optimized for endurance, gorilla musculature contains a far higher proportion of fast-twitch fiber, the type associated with explosive, high-force output. A 2017 study published in PNAS by researchers at the University of Massachusetts examining primate muscle physiology confirmed that great ape musculature produces force outputs per unit of cross-sectional area substantially exceeding what human muscle generates under equivalent conditions. The practical consequence of that finding is not abstract. Researchers and primatologists who have reviewed grip strength data estimate that a silverback gorilla can exert a grip force of approximately 1,300 pounds per square inch. For context, the strongest recorded human grip strength in competitive testing is approximately 195 pounds per square inch. A gorilla does not grip harder than a strong human. It grips harder than a hydraulic vise used in industrial metalworking. Then there are the canine teeth. A silverback's canines measure up to 5 centimeters in length, longer than a lion's. They are not used for eating. Gorillas are predominantly herbivorous. The canines exist for one purpose: intraspecific combat, the resolution of disputes between males. They are not used defensively, the way a prey animal deploys its horns in retreat. They are used strategically in the context of a charge that has been building, behaviorally, for minutes or longer, with deliberate escalation through vocalization, display, and finally contact. And it knows exactly where to strike. No case communicates what a gorilla actually is, in the clearest, most irreversible terms, better than what happened at the Brookfield Zoo in Chicago, Illinois, on August 16, 1996. A 3-year-old boy fell approximately 5.5 meters into the Tropic World gorilla enclosure at Brookfield Zoo. He landed on the concrete floor of the habitat, unconscious, bleeding from head wounds, and lay motionless in an enclosure occupied by a group of 7 western lowland gorillas, including adult males. What happened next was documented on video and reviewed by primatologists, behavioral researchers, and the popular press for years afterward. An 8-year-old female named Binti Jua, herself a mother, carrying her own 17-month-old infant on her back, approached the unconscious child, lifted him carefully, carried him approximately 18 meters to an access door used by zookeepers, and held him there, positioning her body between the child and the other gorillas until paramedics could retrieve him. The child survived. Binti Jua became internationally famous. The story was reproduced on front pages worldwide as evidence of gorilla gentleness, gorilla empathy, gorilla kinship with humanity. It is a true story, and it contains, embedded within it, the exact detail that the headlines consistently omitted. Binti Jua was not a wild gorilla operating on unmodified instinct. She had been hand-raised by humans at the San Francisco Zoo after her mother rejected her, and had been specifically trained by zookeepers at Brookfield, using her own infant as a prop, on how to handle and present an infant for veterinary care. The behavior the world interpreted as spontaneous cross-species empathy was, at least in part, a trained response being applied to an unfamiliar situation by an animal with a specific learned history. This does not diminish what she did. It makes it more interesting and considerably more unsettling, because it means the gorilla assessed the situation, identified the relevant category, incapacitated infant requiring presentation to humans, and applied a learned behavioral template to a novel context. That is not reflex. That is not maternal instinct in any simple sense. Dr. Franz de Waal, the primatologist at Emory University who has spent decades studying great ape cognition and empathy, reviewed the Binti Jua incident in his 2016 book, Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are? And noted that the behavior demonstrated something researchers had long suspected but struggled to document cleanly: the capacity in great apes for what he termed perspective taking, the ability to model another individual's situation, needs, and helplessness, and to modify behavior accordingly. An animal capable of genuine perspective taking is an animal capable of understanding vulnerability. And an animal that understands vulnerability understands how to exploit it. This is the detail that never makes it into the headlines. The dangerous behaviors are not random. They are not frenzied. They are deliberate, executed by an animal with the cognitive architecture to assess, categorize, and respond to a situation with something that functions, operationally, like judgment. But the most alarming expression of the gorilla's danger is not the canine teeth, the grip strength, or the charge that reaches 40 kilometers per hour across open ground. It is intelligence. Specifically, it is a form of social and cognitive intelligence so sophisticated that it has forced researchers to repeatedly revise the boundaries of what was assumed to be exclusively human capability. The most extensively documented window into gorilla cognition remains the work conducted with Coco, a female western lowland gorilla born at the San Francisco Zoo in 1971 and studied by Dr. Francine Patterson of the Gorilla Foundation from 1972 until Coco's death in 2018. Over the course of that 46-year study, Coco acquired a working vocabulary of over 1,000 signs in American Sign Language and demonstrated comprehension of approximately 2,000 words of spoken English. The raw vocabulary number is striking. What it conceals is more important. Silverbacks do not simply dominate through size. They build coalitions. They form alliances with subordinate males, blackbacks, younger males who have not yet achieved dominant status, offering them access to peripheral females in exchange for support during territorial confrontations. These arrangements are not fixed. They shift. A silverback who loses physical condition will find his coalition eroding, his former allies recalculating, his position increasingly contested by younger males who have been watching, for months or years, for exactly this moment. She was thinking ahead. She was managing uncertainty. It is the intelligence of the gorilla, far more than its grip or its canines, that should rearrange something fundamental in how you think about this animal. The gorilla is disappearing, and the way it is disappearing matters. The IUCN Red List classifies both subspecies of eastern gorilla, the mountain gorilla and the Grauer's gorilla, as critically endangered. The mountain gorilla population, after decades of intensive conservation effort, stands at approximately 1,063 individuals as of the most recent census data. The Grauer's gorilla population has declined by approximately 77% since 1994, a collapse driven by mining activity, armed conflict, and habitat fragmentation in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Western lowland gorillas, the subspecies most commonly seen in zoos, have lost an estimated 60% of their wild population over the past 25 years. The primary drivers are habitat loss to agricultural expansion, logging, and the bushmeat trade, which treats gorillas as a protein source and operates in regions where enforcement is structurally impossible. What habitat loss produces in gorillas is not simply fewer animals in smaller spaces. It produces animals under severe resource pressure, nutritionally stressed, territorially compressed, in increasing proximity to human settlements and agricultural land. A gorilla under resource pressure is a gorilla with elevated cortisol and elevated aggression, the worst possible version of an already formidable animal, being pushed against a human world that has no coherent plan for what to do when it arrives. In the eastern DRC, human-gorilla conflict incidents have increased measurably in the past decade. In areas where Grauer's gorilla range overlaps with smallholder agricultural land, crop raiding by gorillas has become a documented pattern, and the human response, increasingly, is lethal. And here is the hardest thing to hold in your mind, all at once. The gorilla is not evil. It is not malevolent. It is not even, by its own standards, cruel. It is exactly what 10 million years of evolution under relentless competitive pressure produces when you place it inside a social world that rewards intelligence, punishes weakness, and offers no mercy for the group that loses its territory and no second chance for the silverback who fails to hold his ground. The gorilla remembers. That is the detail that changes everything. It remembers the members of its group who have died. It remembers the faces of individual humans it has encountered over years of contact. It forms attachments that last decades. It grieves. It plans. It lies when lying is useful. It watches younger males with the practiced attention of something that knows what ambition looks like, because it has felt it. We built glass between ourselves and this animal and called it safety. We gave it a name that means something like warrior in the Fang language of Central Africa, and then decided it was gentle because it didn't charge the glass. It didn't charge the glass because it was watching, calculating, filing information about the soft, slow, fragile things on the other side that come and go on schedules it has long since memorized. And somewhere in a shrinking corridor of highland forest, above the cloud line, in the cold dark between the volcanoes, a silverback is sitting with his group around him, the last of the fruit eaten, the range a little smaller than it was last year. He does not know what we have built. He only knows what we have taken. And he remembers everything.